But yes, we're delighted today to have the legendary, and he's gone even more legendary now, Richard Rawlings. How are you, Richard? You okay?
I'm very good, thanks, Simon. Yeah, what interesting times, and exciting times as well. Great to see you looking so upbeat as ever with the bog rolls in the background. That's a good one.
It's the new currency. The new currency. So that's what we're doing with. We're looking there, and yes, ironic there that you say we live in interesting times, which of course is a Chinese curse. Which you could say this whole thing, isn't it? May we live in interesting times.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not getting into conspiracy theories. That's on another show.
I know, it's crazy. But I think what it has done, it's given us the gift of time. And the gift of time has allowed us to reconsider what we're all about on a very personal level, hasn't it? People have come down, they've been at home, they think, my God, what's going on? What does the future hold? Is life ever going to go back to normal? And if it doesn't, what am I going to do? So we've sort of had a reset of the clock, and has given us the opportunity to start afresh. And very often that day one thinking is really going to enable some fantastic opportunities.
And it genuinely, I mean, although it seems wrong to call it an opportunity, but it simply is a fact. This is probably a once in a lifetime opportunity to sit back and review your business without having to run your business at the same time, isn't it?
And how often do we do it? We all know we should be working on our business as much as in it, and we just don't seem to have time. This time has been foisted upon us, and it's actually been a really good thing. A really good thing. I've done some training myself in this time. I've become certified as a certified life coach as well, a well-being coach.
You were talking about that.
Which kind of fits.
Well, maybe David will talk to you afterwards at that, because actually one of the things that he's been focusing on in our podcast is his mental well-being and everything else, an area that's often overlooked. We were talking. I don't know if you know Peter Gilchrist, the Australian, and he was talking about that to a large degree. Obviously, that it had been largely ignored. So it'd be fascinating to get your views on that later. But for the moment, as we said before, yes, you shameless attention seeker that I am, but you've gazumped me. And you've got what's his name out of the Batman? Two-Face. So I'm not calling Richard Rawlings two-faced, because that would be outrageous. and property industry, I would pick me up on that. But Richard, do you want to give us a clue as to this wonderful? And I think it's quite a cool look, actually.
Well, it is two-faced. It is two-faced, and there's a very deliberate reason for that kind of links into what I want to speak about this morning. The thing about this morning is when we go back to work, whether you're already back yesterday or you're going to leave it a while yet, whenever you come back, what is the fresh thing you're going to do? What is the thing that's going to kickstart your business? Because if we carry on in the way that we have been, and that's fine, because many agents are very good, you're going to get a few listings, you're going to do a few sales, you're going to make some money, and that's fine. But we know it does take time to get to that stage and build that pipeline. What I want to do is short circuit that whole system and recognize that there has been an opportunity right underneath our noses that is actually the other side of agency. We're sales agents, we act for sellers on that side of the coin. What about acting for buyers as a revenue stream, as a whole new revenue stream? It is right there for the taking. I've been banging on about this for a while, and some of my clients are already doing it, but I'm now formalizing it. I'm actually introducing a whole seminar about it and how to integrate a buyer representation service into your existing estate agency business. Because it used to be the domain of the search agents, and the sort of Henry Pryor of this world, and that's fine. But where do they get their clients from? Well, if we were doing it, where do we get our clients from? We've already got them. They're right there in our database, hundreds and hundreds of buyers. So I'm going to show you the maths of it. I'm going to show you just a snapshot of who it's suitable for, which is not everybody, and where the opportunity lies. So I'll kick off.
Well, look, I mean, I think this is one of those classic areas there, isn't it? Reimagining your business. Figure out if this could be a key part of your strategy going forward. So to the great cheers of the audience, I will now silence and mute myself, and I will hand over to you and have a great presentation, and we'll catch up with you afterwards.
Fantastic. That's great, Simon. Thank you very much. So there's there's no pink and there's no drink. So Simon is definitely not here. We're going to leave Simon behind and pick up with him a little later on. So hopefully I'm going to be able to share my screen, which is that, and I'm going to share that now. And okay. So David, can you see my screen okay, my presentation? Yep, thumbs up.
Yeah, we can see that.
Yep, that's great. Good stuff. Okay, I'm sorry to steal sort of common images and not take advantage of this desperate situation, and certainly saying thank goodness, thank God, and thank you for our wonderful NHS. So I'll definitely start off by saying that, but I have stolen the graphics, and and despite all the confusing messages of the government, I want to make a very clear message. I should be a politician. I want to be very clear about this. We're looking at a post-virus re-entry plan that is buyer representation now, alongside what you already do. And it's really, really smart. And I'll show you how it all works. Firstly, why buyer representation at all? Because surely we represent sellers. And that's fine. That's cool. I get that. That's where we're coming from. The thing is, though, that the vast majority of the time, we fail to sell to our current buyers. You've got all these buyers, but according to my research and working with my clients and others, it seems like typically, if you look at all the buyers you actually have registered with you, eventually you're only going to sell to 5% of those buyers. And that's it could be harsh and say, you know, that's a massive failure. But actually that is the fact. And that's possibly why we don't treat our buyers particularly well, maybe because we know at the end of the day, they're probably not going to buy from us. Unlike in other parts of the country, the world, where it's done slightly differently. With buyer representation, there is a better chance of actually making a fee, and you can do it faster as well. And I'll show you how that works. So it's certainly very good for business, because on the basis you only sell to 5% of your buyers, if you can convert just another 5% only of your current applicants into paying buyer clients, well, it stands to reason you've doubled your revenues. And that is a wow factor. That's a realization, my goodness me, that is the other side to the face, isn't it? The other side to the coin, that actually it's right there for the taking, and we've never recognized it before. And I'm going to show you how to do it, or go part way to how to, so it's a whole half-day seminar with all sorts of documentation and everything, but I want to go through the guts of it firstly. So it's great business, and it's right there. So let's just do a little example snapshot. Let's say you've got 550 applicants on your books. This is a little exercise I did with an agent the other day. 550 applicants on their books. About 5% actually buy it through you. Maybe more, maybe less. Do your own figures, but let's take it at 5%. So that's 27 people who buy through you, and 523 who don't buy through you. Now let's say, I'm guessing, half of those people are tourists. They don't buy at all. They're just looking around. They never actually get around to buying. So let's just scrub half of those. That still means there are 261 people who are going to buy through your competitors. And that means you're not making any money on those deals. You're not involved in those transactions. There's no reputation enhancement. There's no exposure. There's certainly no revenue. You've got a great relationship with those buyers, but you're saying, sorry, haven't got any property for you. Bye-bye, go and buy through somebody else. Or they'll do that naturally. Because, of course, they don't care who they buy through. They just want to buy the right property, of course. Taking those 261 people, if we go down and say, well, look, let's say how many of those are going to be serious and able? It's going to be 30 to 40% of those who are serious and able buyers. That's 102 applicants. Now, if you can convert about 30% of those, and my research suggests you should be able to, and that's breaking it down, those who are actually going to sell, they're serious, they're able, they're keen. These are your hot buyers. You can convert 30% of those. That's another 31 extra clients. Now, with buyer representation, there's also a higher chance of a transaction actually happening. Because if you think about it, you've got a regular seller client. They may choose not to sell. They might take the house off the market. They might sell it through another agent. They might ditch you and give it to another agent, or just have a change of heart, a change of mind, or they might sell it privately, or something could happen. So let's say there's maybe a 75, 80% chance, maybe less, of you selling a property on which you're instructed. But if you're instructed to represent a buyer, there's more like a 90% chance of a transaction, because you're only going to sign up hot, willing, and able purchasers. They are in the mood to buy. They are going to buy. They are unlikely to say, we've decided not to sell after all, we're staying here. These people need to move. They need to buy, and quickly. And so there's a higher chance of a transaction with a buyer than there is with a seller client. So that's another 27 sales. That's 100% increase, a 100% increase, 100% increase in your business. Now, at the moment, you could say, well, it's 100% of nothing, which I get, but we're going to switch on pretty quickly. All those people who didn't buy and sell before, they're going to pile back in as soon as possible. And it's already starting. Agents I'm speaking to, they've maintained a bit of momentum, and it's starting to pile on now. So I think we're going to be okay. But whatever you were doing before, the great thing is you have got applicants, and you will get applicants as a result of the properties that you advertise, and they are your potential client base. And as I say, it's a faster sale as well, which is interesting, because let's say you take on a regular property, regular instruction, it's going to take 1, 2, 3, 4 months to find a buyer maybe, and then let's be generous and give it a month to exchange and a month for completion. That's unlikely nowadays, I know, but let's just put it in there anyway. But somebody who's keen to buy and is ready, willing and able, the only type of buyer you're going to sign up and probably doesn't have anywhere to sell, they're much more, a keen buyer finds a property quite quickly, don't they? A keen seller has to wait for a buyer to be found. A keen buyer finds a property quickly. And that means we're going to shrink that whole process from start to when you get your money after completion, at least 6 months later, maybe on a regular instruction. We're going to shrink that down to 2, 3, 4 months instead. Not every time, but generally speaking, I think you'll find a buyer represented transaction is much faster than a seller one. There's definitely an appetite for this. It's no longer the sole domain of the relocation agents that you would have heard of, because well, we'll talk about those in a moment. But we know that discerning people, and those are the only people you're going to be offering this service to, they recognize the benefit of employing an expert. These are the people who, when their tap is dripping, they don't go to B&Q and buy a washer, they call a plumber. These are the people who don't do their own tax returns, they hire an accountant. These are the people who don't design their own garden down at the garden centre, they call a garden designer in. These are the people who don't use purple bricks, they call in a real estate agent, because they recognise the value in these services and they're prepared to pay for it too. These are the people we are going after. We're not going after anybody else but those discerning people who recognise the benefit of employing an expert. And I always like to liken it to having an uncle in the area. You know, I live in Cheltenham, and if I was moving to, let's say, Norwich, I don't know Norwich well at all, but if I was posted to Norwich, I'd be phoning my brother, or uncle, my brother in this case, I'd be phoning my brother Michael in Norwich. I'd be saying, Michael, I've been posted to Norwich. I don't know Norwich. I've seen this property online. Looks quite good. What do you think? And he's going to say, how much for a house in that street? You do know they back onto the railway, don't you? What have you tried this street? And they're much better value, and I reckon it's worth this. I don't know. It's like having a brother or an uncle in the area who's genuinely on your side and is going to help you move. And that's what we do. At the moment, we are genuinely on the seller side, and ideally, we help people move. My mantra is, we help people move. But now we're on the seller side. We help people move. We're not changing our business away from selling onto buying. We're adding buying into our selling business. The two run absolutely hand in hand, side by side. And there is never a conflict of interest, by the way, because you're never going to be representing both the seller and the buyer in the same transaction. There is increasing familiarity with the concept over the last few years. There has been. Everyone's heard of, Phil and Kirsty. You've got Simon Hawksley, of course, who's very, very prominent in this at the higher end, so he does well with that. There's Henry Pryor, who's got a very high profile on TV as a buyer's agent, and he's always rightly banging on about how prices should be falling and how he can get good deals for buyers, which is a flip side to your message. Hey, the market's rising. We can get you the best possible price in the highest possible time and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. What about the other side of it? Got Perry Power, who again, an agent who's very successfully integrated this into his business, whereas Henry Pryor will solely act for buyers. And I wonder where he gets his clients from, because he doesn't have any houses on his books to attract buyers. So that's a toughie for him. It's a lot easier for you, because you've already got all these buyers. They're all warm. You know them all. You've got their phone number. You can phone them up and offer them this service. You don't even have to advertise it. And then, you know, we all know Phil and Kirsty as well with location, location, location. So there is awareness of this, but the one sector of society that seems not to have been fully aware of it is estate agents themselves, which is really, really weird. And I want to change that. Interesting, I'm just introduced to my wife, actually. Now, I don't know if she can hear. She's downstairs. She shouldn't hear this bit, but, you know, isn't it a coincidence? And by the way, we've been married for 38 years, okay? Our anniversary coming up, 38 years. We were both 18, 19. And isn't it a coincidence, don't you think, that both Charlotte and I lived in the same village at the same time, and we were the same age, and we each thought that the other person would be suitable marriage material? Now, what are the chances of that? What a coincidence. There is 1.6 billion people, there's 6 billion people on Earth. Now, as far as I've discovered to date, I'm not gay. So that leaves 3 billion women that potentially could be my wife. Isn't it a coincidence that Charlotte happened to also think I could be right for her, was in the right time, at the right place, marriageable age, in the same place as me? What a coincidence. Really? I'm not so sure. You know what? And don't tell Charlotte this, but if I hadn't found Charlotte, if she hadn't been there, you know what? 3 billion other women, I'm sure I would have found somebody else just as good down the line at some stage. And it's the same with property. There isn't that one perfect property waiting to be found. They don't need to. A serious buyer is not going to wait years to find the perfect partner or perfect home, perfect house. They're probably going to see what? 7? Going to check out 7 women. I'll marry one of them, maybe. I'm not telling Charlotte how many. We won't go down there. We'll go down. But they just need to see about, let's say, 7 properties before they feel ready, because the way they decide, before they feel ready to buy one of them. So all we have to do is show them 7 properties. We show them 7 properties. Chances are they'll buy one of them. Problem is, we don't have 7 suitable properties. We might have 1 or 2, and then we have to say, I'll phone you when we've got something, don't worry, you know, and they're going to say, okay, fine, but in the meantime, I'm going to check out other agents' properties. So that's a problem. We don't have enough suitable properties to show the hottest buyers, which is such a shame. Such a shame. When buyers come from overseas, you show them 1 or 2 properties and you say, that's it, I don't have any more. They say, what do you mean? There's plenty on the market. And you say, oh, yes, but sorry, they're not on our books. They say, well, what sort of service is that? I come over here, you claim to be a specialist in the property market in this area, and you can't show me those properties that are for sale. I thought we were getting on so well. Why do I now have to start up a relationship with another agent? It's crazy, really, when you think about it. So each agent, as we know, only represents their own rather limited stock of properties that they're trying to flog to buyers. We don't care who buys it. Our job is to sell it at the highest possible price, of course, on behalf of the seller. Whereas the buyer needs someone who's actually really genuinely, legally, formally on their side, who knows the areas, who knows the values, who knows the agents, who knows what's hot, what's not. So not just someone who's trying to flog them a house. And this is where it gets a bit smarter, because if you think about it, you know, you wouldn't, if you're getting divorced, you wouldn't each employ the same lawyer to represent both sides, would you? That just doesn't make sense. Or any legal situation. I love this picture. Guess which side of the relationship the lawyer is on in this picture. I think it's very clear from all the body language and everything. That lawyer is representing that lady, isn't she? So it will be unthinkable. I mean, they'd get a deal through for sure, but somebody will be the winner and somebody will be the loser, because the loser didn't have a proper person who knew what they were doing to represent their best interests. So who uses a buyer's agent? Well, it's interesting. Lots of people could. In fact, virtually anybody. Let's go through some. I mean, certainly I mentioned overseas buyers. I mean, they're used to acting in this way in most places around the world. So it will be perfectly normal for them. A client of mine the other day literally saw this presentation and within 24 hours had an overseas buyers, signed them up at 2%, I think it was the equivalent to 2%, and job done. And that was very interesting. Hadn't even done my training course. I thought, oh, and I wouldn't be charging on a percentage. But what I'm saying is the overseas buyer was used to paying quite a lot of money for representation. Someone who's cash rich, time poor, wealthy individuals. They need someone to shift and manage. These are the people who do employ people. They buy the most expensive cars and most expensive houses. They'll pay the highest estate agency commission. By the way, they employ architects and accountants and lawyers and buyers agents when it comes to moving house. Of course, it fits with who they are, what they do, and how they manage their money and their time. In a way, an obvious one would be a first-time buyer. In some respects, they're in need of it most because they don't know where to start and they're very emotional. They're living with mum and dad. They're screaming to get out. The first miserable, damp basement flat they see, they say, great, I'll buy it because it'll be my miserable, damp basement flat. It's pride of ownership that is their motivator there. And if anybody needs guidance, it will be them, surely. So they also don't know how to negotiate. They don't want to lose it, so we'll just pay the asking price, but they certainly need someone to guide, advise, and negotiate. I had someone the other day, actually, first time buyer. Their parents insisted that the agent represent the buyer. The agent didn't know how to do it, which was such a shame. It's so straightforward. But that was an interesting perspective on perhaps how consumers are moving. The property investor, of course, these can be your permanent clients. So often we'll waft something in front of an investor in the hope of getting the letting contract. But why not act for that investor and have a deal going where you're actually making something off the sale in the first place and still get the lettings because you are that person's lifetime agent. And you're speaking their language, so about yield, capital appreciation, return on investment, blah, blah, blah. A better term than letting agent is investment manager, property investment manager. And Emma Roberts at Martin & Co in Chelmsford, she has the Chelmsford Investors Property blog or something. She's fantastic because every week she'll just post a little video in front of a house and say, this is my house of the week. She's just vlog, she's with Martin & Co, okay? And this is my house of the week, 3-bedroom semi-detached house, Acacia Avenue. It's on for £312,000. I reckon you get rental at this. It seems about the right price, but I'd hope to get it for a bit less than that. It's on the market with Jackson Stocks. If you want to have a look at it, let me know or call them. Amazing. How transparent is that? How trustworthy is that? That she is willingly sort of promoting other agents' stock, but there's method in the madness to doing that. You then got perhaps somebody starting a new job, they don't know the area, and they're more focused on tying up loose ends and starting their new job than house hunting. Although the hunting remains, by the way. I'm not suggesting that you are going to become a search agent. That takes a lot of time and a lot of liabilities and stuff with it. You are helping people move here. You're not finding them a property. And there's a significant distinction here. It means that when if they go online and see things, they can say, oh, Richard, I've seen this house here. What do you think? Will you come and look at it with me? That's how this relationship works. It isn't totally hands-off from their point of view, and you find properties for them. Although you may, particularly with jaw drops to people that you think might be selling, perhaps previous valuations that you've done or marketing proposal meetings that you've done, then maybe you can reignite them. And there'll be no fee for that seller either, of course. So it's a very useful way in there. So it's not a full search situation. You've got Miss Marple, the elderly lady, hasn't moved for 20 years. Her son would be helping her, but he lives in Sydney, Australia. So she's got no one to guide and assist and advise and protect. She needs protection. Whereas the other agents, no matter how nice they may be, and agents are nice, at the end of the day, they're not there to protect the buyer. They're there to do the best for the seller. Even your average family, perhaps they live out of the area. They don't really want to tell their children they're moving yet, so they've got to keep it all a bit discreet and do a lot of this stuff quite discreetly. And those emotions run very high when wives say, I really want it, and the husband's saying, but it's too expensive. And you're that person in the middle who can guide them through all this. Or someone who's just confused, someone who really doesn't know where to start. But again, they recognize the value of employing a specialist. And that's what you are, of course. As far as they're concerned, huge number of advantages, because you now have access to every property on the market, not just your own stock. No stone will be left unturned until you found the right property. You know, we'll contact other agents, we'll contact other sellers on your behalf, we'll put letters through doors, maybe on their behalf as well. And I provide all those letters as part of my training pack. So we use our knowledge of the area to your advantage. We're not just here to sell you a house. In fact, we might so, as I mentioned, it's not a full search facility. This is a bolt-on to do what you already do with your sellers, but this time with your buyers. By the way, can I just ask you to fold your arms like that? Just try this. Just fold your arms in the way you normally fold your arms. Okay. Now do it the other way. Like that. It's weird, isn't it? It's weird. It feels strange. It's uncomfortable, but it's exactly the same. It's just a different way of doing exactly the same thing. It's a bit like going over the channel and hiring a car in France. It's the other side of the road. It feels a bit weird, but you know what? It's exactly the same, really. It's just the mirror image, isn't it? A few other advantages. Obviously, we negotiate the best terms. We are fantastic negotiators. It is inbred in us. And believe me, it is far easier as a negotiator, and I regard myself as an experienced negotiator, I would far rather and would do far better as a deal in negotiating the purchase of something than the sale of something. You hold stronger cards when you're in a buying position than you are when you're in a selling position. So we are fantastic negotiators. And as a trained buyer representing agent, there's some other negotiation tactics up your sleeve you can use as well. It's also useful for sellers to see that you are using a buyer's agent, because that demonstrates that you're serious and committed. So that makes you a more attractive purchaser. Obviously, we'll chase all the transactions and be involved in the chain as we would as a seller's agent, and become your single point of contact in that. So if you're busy and you've got a single point of contact in that situation, and we never forget who we represent. So the reason why you should vote for buyers, you've already got everything in place. Hopefully the penny's beginning to drop here. And I know you've got some questions. Don't worry, they're very serious questions and I will address them. But you're already good to go on this. You've got the market knowledge, you've got the local knowledge, you know about the sales process, you are experts in the field. You've got fantastic negotiation skills, as well as interpersonal relationship skills, which are very important for getting that formal buyer represented relationship off the ground to begin with. You've got the tools in place, like pricing research, so that a buyer doesn't have. I mean, if you use Lead Hub, for example, you can go in and see exactly what's been on the market, the actual address, and you can see how long it's been on the market, when it changed agents. There's some really useful information there, as well as other information about, whereas the selling agent will say to the buyer, oh, but this sold around the corner for that much. You're now going to be saying, yeah, Mr. Seller, there's no way we're paying that because this hasn't sold, this hasn't sold, this has been on the market for 12 months, this hasn't sold, this has been reduced. It's the other side of the coin. You know this stuff. You now need to implement it in the opposite way around. It's gamekeeper turned poacher, really, isn't it? The one thing you do have, though, is buyers. This is the icing on the cake, because if you wanted to start a buyer representation service, where would you get your buyers from? You don't need to worry about that. You don't even need to advertise this. In fact, I wouldn't advertise the service. You don't want to slightly jeopardize your reputation as a fantastic seller's agent that you've perhaps spent years building. You've already got the buyers. You've got hundreds of applicants on your books already. And my training will show you how to extract clients out of that applicant base. Fees, I recommend you charge 20%, some agents charge 25, 20% of the difference between the current asking price and the lower purchase price that you are able to secure through your good negotiation. You may want to charge a minimum fee of 1%, which also covers it. Your best advice to them might be, pay the asking price. This is a great property, it's just come on the market, this is going to sell, it's well priced, please pay the asking price, or it's worthwhile going in beyond the asking price. There are those situations where the right advice is to pay over the asking price, in which case a standard 1%. But what I really am keen to do here is incentivize it so it's seen that the lower price they pay, the more money you make. Whereas a regular selling agent, the more they get, the more the agent makes. You can't have that applying on the flip side. So the process would be you literally sign by, they register in the usual way, you show them what you have. Hopefully you'll sell them one of your properties, but chances are you won't. Decide whether they're suitable, and there's a whole load of parameters around that I do in my training. And if they fit those parameters, then sign them up with a it's basically a sole agency agreement, just like a seller's sole agency agreement, but it's a buyer's sole agency agreement. Then research, ideally, the overpriced stock, the properties that would perhaps have been just out of their reach that you know should be negotiable. Those are the properties they may not have otherwise seen because they were apparently out of reach. Arrange viewings with the seller's estate agent or even directly with the seller. I'll come on to the seller's agent in a moment. Negotiate a reasonable price, and then empower. You can go further by empowering your buyer with a pre-offer survey, maybe. I can, ready to buy certificates, formal offer document, fantastic formal offer document we use, that makes your buyers so attractive to the seller. So I mentioned arranging viewings with the relevant estate agent, and you're going to say, okay, well, hold on. What happens then? When I phone one of my competitors and say, hello, Mr. Competing Estate Agent, I've got a buyer and I would like to show them one of your properties, please. What's that agent going to say? Well, I mean, they're going to probably, they should say, if they're reasonable agents with a brain, they're going to say, well, hold on, of course I'm going to let your buyer around. No problem, anytime you like, because I still make my commission as a selling agent. And the great thing is I get to work with a fellow professional who's also incentivized to get the sale through as well. Cool, bring it on. Why not? Why would you not do that? If you've got a buyer's agent at the moment, the rare occasions when a buyer's agent might contact you, you're going to say, fantastic, absolutely. So that's good. Begins to make a bit more sense now. But what if you've got an agent who doesn't get it? And they say, hold on a moment, wait a cotton picking second. What are you doing? No way. And all that language there. So from their point of view, that would be a big mistake, because if that agent doesn't want to cooperate, which is negligent to their client, they know that there's a serious buyer, so serious they're prepared to pay somebody to represent them, to help them move quickly, and they're not offering that to their seller. Gross negligence. You can go and knock on the door. Knock on the door. Hello, Mr. Seller. Don't worry, not after any fees, but I represent a buyer. They're very keen to buy it. They're really keen to see your house. I phoned your agent to try and make an appointment, but they wouldn't let us in. Oh, wouldn't they? That's interesting. That's interesting. So what's that doing with that relationship with that seller and their client and their estate agent? So what this does also, it's a good way of getting instructions because it puts you in a very favorable position right in front of your competitors' clients. So hopefully you get them around the house and hopefully they buy it. If they don't buy it, you may well pick up that regular instruction from that disillusioned seller. So hopefully beginning to make a bit more sense now. So good as an instruction gainer because it gives you access to properties that are not on your books that may subsequently become on your books as a result of them meeting you wearing a different hat. It means also you can advertise to people, you can advertise, sell your house for free. Mr. Seller, there are possible, come, let's have a chat about the sale of your property. It may well be that there'll be no fees involved. In other words, we have a number of buyer represented clients. If one of them buys it, we'll be representing them. So is it okay if we don't charge you any fees? I'm sure they won't mind. It also means you can go back to your previous, all those valuations that went nowhere. You can say, possible opportunity here, Mr. Seller, and you can kickstart that conversation again. You could include the service within your sales commission if you're charging 2.5%, 3%, as many agents are now starting to. Good opportunity to up your fees in this market. And say, look, I know we're more expensive than the other agents you've spoken to, but tell you what, we'll include our buyer agency service in it. So just as we'll use our negotiation skills and your capacity as a seller to get you the highest price, so we'll use those same skills and your capacity as a buyer to get the lowest price on your onward purchase, as long as it's not one of the properties on our books, because it'll be a conflict of interest. It attracts buyers who may be selling, and this is a great thing, you become my agent. I'll get my agent on that. And you'll be involved in more transactions, so that enhances your market share and your reputation generally. So what we're doing, it's the two sides of the coin. There's part of the market we have just not seen, and it's been right there. It's like a dentist who's been working in the business for years and suddenly, oh my God, people have two sets of teeth. I never knew that. If only I'd realized that I could have doubled my revenue. I'd be merrily drilling the bottom settle. I should have looked up. My goodness, there they were. Exactly the same scenario. So here's your post-virus action plan. Where are we? 20, yeah, good. Timing's fine. So your post-virus action plan to kickstart this is to do 5 things. Firstly, identify likely potential buyer-represented clients from your database of buyers. You probably have hundreds of buyers. Instead of phoning, as some agents still do, hello, Mr. Buyer, you still looking for a house? Yes, we are. Have you got one? No, sorry, just finally actually still looking at me. It doesn't make sense. Either offer them a property or offer them buyer representation if they are the right sort of people for it. So identify the buyers, offer them the service, sign up just 5% of those people that you offer the service to. If you just sign up 5% of those people on your database, well, that's going to double your revenues, isn't it? Literally, just do the maths, it doubles your revenues. I can go through the maths in detail on how the fees and everything work later on if you wish. And number 5, what's the 5th thing? Oh yeah, do my online seminar. I can do it online, I can do it personally, I can do it via Zoom. There's 3 different options on that. I've already got a few people already signed up to do that in the next few days. So I'm busy with this because there is an appetite for it. So, moving back to our alert, stay alert. Alert to what? I don't know, but be alert to buyer representation. Help people move, protect income, and save your business during these times. I promise you, you put your mind to this. This is the next chapter in a state agency that's always been there, frankly, that we never really have taken full advantage of. This time has prompted us to say, what do I have to do to make money now? My recommendation is implement a buyer representation service from within your existing estate agency. Any more details, check out rawlings.info or email me at richard@rawlings.info, and I'd love to work with you on that. We can discuss it further. Okay, so back to the studio, I think.
Thank you, Richard. That's fascinating.
There we go, David.
Can you hear me again?
Absolutely.
Great. That's fantastic. Obviously, completely different perspective. So as an agent, it's been drummed into us over the years that we only obviously act for one party. And again, I think you reminded us there, you have to remember who it is that you're acting for. And I think the reason why agents tend not to make that leap and that shift over to acting for buyers is it's always been drummed into us that we're acting for the sellers. So in fact, we've actually got a question here from Michael Latterais, who has asked us if, you know, whether you'd advertise this service or whether you'd introduce it as a special option on top. And I guess you want to stay away from advertising that service openly, because that's going to send a message to vendors that perhaps you're wearing 2 hats too often.
You're absolutely right, David. And I think the market is not yet ready, comfortable enough to see it as a service that everyone's going to offer. 2 reasons for not advertising it and splashing it all over your website is A, as you rightly say, you don't want to dilute your key message, which is the usual, we help sellers sell for the highest price, shortest possible time. And that might be a bit confusing until this concept is more deeply entrenched in society. But secondly, the reason why you might want to promote it is to attract potential clients. You don't need to do that. You already have the potential clients and you already have a relationship with them. This is not cold calling. So you've got advertising, cold calling, warm calling. This is hot calling. These are people who know, they know you. They're happy to have your call. They've given you their details. There's no GDPR issues, you know, they're right there. So it's just converting a small proportion of the people you already have in your books to client status. So you're absolutely right, David. And thank you for the question, Michael. I personally would not be advertising it. I wouldn't need to.
Okay. We've got another, I think it's more of a comment here. Simon Hawksley has chipped in that he offers standalone agency so that there's no conflict and therefore they can, you know, they can advertise that freely. as much as they like. But talk to me. It's interesting that you sort of anticipated some of the questions that I've seen online. And one of the main questions is, how are other agents going to swallow this? So when you approach them and say, hello, I'm a competing agent, but by the way, I'm representing Mr. and Mrs. X, and I am their agent, and I'd like to negotiate on this sale. As an industry, we're extremely paranoid when it comes to competition and sharing details with other agents, and there's very little meaningful collaboration on a day-to-day basis. Although this period of COVID has been fantastic for sharing, I'm pretty sure that we'll all go back to where we were before. Your tips for that first conversation with that agent?
Yeah, good question there. One of the things I have in my document pack is a letter or an email to send to competing agents explaining what you're doing and that they may well be hearing from us with buyers in the future. Ideally there will be a mind shift in this as more agents get it. And when I've shared this around and on training courses and things, and I've asked agents, what would you do if another agent phoned and said they had a buyer paying to buy this property? They've said, fine, that's great, because more chance. Our job is to sell that house. Our duty is to let anybody around who's there. Some of them say, well, tell me who the buyer is, and I'll see if they're on our books. That's fine. You say, yeah, it's Mr. and Mrs. Fordham. They may well be on your books, but I'm still representing them. So if you want to show them around, that's fine. You can show them around, but I'm going to come with them. So it's a much more transparent thing. But as I say, if an agent says no, in a way, that's quite a good opportunity to highlight that negligence with that agent's client, because normally you can't really, particularly in Scotland, you can't go and approach another agent's client in that way, and particularly in view of the liability for dual fees and that sort of thing. Well, you can obviously you can sort of prospect and everything, but in this instance, you can just knock on the door and say, I'm not after any fees. There is no potential for dual fee liability at all, because I represent this buyer. I happen to be an estate agent, and sometimes I represent sellers, sometimes I represent buyers, and it's a really good way of getting into your competitors' instructions, by the way. So yeah, that agent should accompany.
Okay, I've got a question here from Mary. She's asked, are buyers ready for this service? They're so used to being ignored after viewing. So I guess just to elaborate on that a little bit further, a lot of agents are not particularly great at realizing that the buyers are your next potential client, and that therefore you should be really nurturing that relationship with them. And we tend to treat them as a sort of a means to an end. So we get them into a property. If they don't want it, we don't talk to them again, and so on. So I guess it's going to take a shift in thinking from an agent.
I think it's an interesting point you raised there, actually, David, about buyers are used to. People don't move house frequently enough to be used to anything. We are assuming they are used to it. So let's just knock that bit on the head. Buyers are used to getting a poor service. Now, buyers expect a great service, and they're disappointed if they receive a poor service. But if the question was, are buyers ready for this? Won't most buyers say, why do I need that? I can get it for free with a regular estate agent, even though they're not technically getting that service. I would absolutely agree with that. Most buyers will not go for this. I'm only talking about the 5% who will. Just as in the same way, in your area, most sellers do not sell through you, and most buyers do not buy through you. And most of your applicants will not take this service either. We're not working on the numbers of most. We're working on the numbers of just 5%. You might have a 5% market share. You might sell to 5% of your current buyers. I'm just saying, secure this service with another 5% of the remainder, and you've doubled your revenue. So it doesn't, most people are not going to go for it. That's fine. It's a numbers game that applies to every aspect of what we already know.
Questions still coming in thick and fast on Q&A, but we've got one from Emma Bruce over here that says, what if the competing agent already has the buyer we're representing on their books and are registered with them? But I guess we've answered that. It doesn't conflict, does it?
They're not a registered, they may be a registered buyer, but they're not a client. They may well be on that agent's books as well. And that agent is the agent that's offered them the property. we're the agent that's helping them buy it. So, as I mentioned, we're not a search facility. That's not the idea. We're not the effective cause of sale because we found the property for them, whereas the regular seller's agent, we found the buyer for the property. It's not like that. This is beyond that. This is helping somebody move. This is offering them a negotiation service and all the other things we've mentioned. So they may well have them on their books, and that's okay. But instead of them trying to extract as much money as they can out of them, we're there to protect the buyer, so that the buyer can get a reasonable price in that property. So each again, it's a divorce lawyer, each party having a lawyer to defend their position.
So when you're having that conversation with the buyer, obviously every buyer, if you turn around to them and say, hey, look, I'm going to move heaven and earth to find you the right property, they're going to say, that's fantastic, I'd love that. At what point do you flip the switch and have to have that awkward conversation with them? Yes, but this time it's going to cost you, because they're used to calling you and saying, your service to them is free at that point. At what point is it best to broach that, and how?
Yeah, that's interesting, David, because you know what? We've never really hand on heart done that. We haven't really said, we'll move heaven and high water. Well, we may have said it. We haven't done it, heaven and high water, to find you a property, because we've never been property finders. Our job is not to find that buyer a property. Our job is to sell that seller's property. In doing so, we offer properties for sale, and buyers come to us and they might buy one of them. We've never gone out to find a buyer a property. All we say to buyers usually is, we'll let you know if something comes on, even though we know suitable properties are already on the market. But, they're not our clients, so we can't tell them about it because the other agent said it. Don't want the other agent to get the commission. So it is a matter of explaining to the people, saying to the buyers, look, we've shown you a few houses, we're getting on quite well. I feel we've got a good relationship. We've got a good understanding of your requirements. We don't have any other suitable properties on our books at the moment. And I know you're keen to move, so we don't want to wait for one to come on. We do now offer, though, an alternative service if this could be suitable for you, because I know you live out of the area and you're keen to move. We do actually offer a buyer representation service where we can actually be your eyes on the ground. We can actually help you buy any one of these properties that's on another agent's books. So it wouldn't be me trying to flog you a house. It would be me helping you get the best deal on any one of those houses out there. And what I'll also be able to do is to approach sellers who may not yet be on the market on your behalf. And usually the conversation goes quite well. I've got lots of dialogues on that, but as I say, you can expect 95% of people not to go for it. That's fine. 90%, 95% of people don't usually sell through you anyway.
You just need that small percentage. So at the beginning, in the intro, you were discussing with Simon that you've spent the past few weeks taking advantage of this extra time that we've got. And you've been training yourself, haven't you, in terms of, tell us a little bit about that. Who trains the trainers?
Yeah, there was a certified organization that actually does do well-being coaching for coaches. And as I said, it's a certified thing with the Association of Coaches. And it was a very intensive, I tell you, it was 9 till 5:30 every day for a whole week, with half an hour for lunch and 2 10-minute breaks. On Zoom, that is zapping. Talk about mental well-being, out the window, mate. But it was absolutely fascinating. And I wanted to do that as a natural progression for the success coaching that I do with people in an estate agency environment, because I do feel there is an appetite, not just commercial appetite, but I feel there is a feeling in society that actually, you know what, we've been so focused on make the money, make the money, make the money and everything. And part of that helps us make the money as well is our own mental well-being and where we sit at any one time. And so often we find ourselves standing standing outside and alongside our life. We think our life is our business, and that going home and being ourselves is something you do when you're not in business, whereas it should really be the other way around. And to help focus on how you can be yourself within your business and how you can remember yourself. You know, when I say remember yourself, touch, breathe, smell, see, feel, enjoy, laugh, all the things that make us human that we often put on one side when we go to business because we've got to do the sale. That's all it's about. Very 80s in a way. it's coming all the way through that and putting the real you, not only in yourself at home and your personal life, but the real you at work as well. So you can enjoy, you know, when you're on your deathbed at the age of 80 or 60, if you smoke, and you look back on your life and you say, you know, what do I regret? It's unlikely you're going to say, God, I wish I'd negotiated a better deal on that house we were trying to sell in 2020. You know, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. What you would regret is not spending more time with your children, not having time to look after yourself. The times when you do go out for that country walk and you stop and you look at I don't want to be touchy-feely here, but you stop and look at a leaf in detail. Are you in the moment? Are you recognizing the zest of life? I've been looking up at the sky, and sadly, I've got a skylight above me here, and the sun was coming right down on me like I was blessed from heaven, and it was making this whole Zoom thing look ridiculous. So I've had to stick white paper across my skylight window, but I've really enjoyed seeing how blue the sky is without the vapor trails going over, and how green the spring leaves are. And just to look up for a moment and breathe it in has been fantastic. And before I was saying, let's get on with work, I've got to film something, I've got to do this, got to do that. That can wait a bit as well. You know, if they get called 10 minutes later, it's not the end of the world, because who's important here? Me. I am. It's my life. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and helping people through the coaching.
You heard it here first, folks. Richard Rawlings, the New Age trainer. It's all peace, love, and understanding. Thank you very, very much. It's been very informative. And again, that aspect of mental health is something that I think when you've got more time, and you, especially in lockdown, where you don't necessarily have the same routine that you always had. And that routine is so important generally in keeping us mentally on one particular path, not necessarily the healthiest. It has been very interesting to see people's thoughts after sort of spending some time with themselves and the families. Do you think you'll see, are you having any conversations with agents where they've sort of woken up and thought, God, what the hell am I doing? I'd like to go and do something else now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's fine too. And maybe that's a wake-up call they've needed. You know, they've been striving and striving and striving even through the good times. And then it's gone downhill, and they thought, oh, am I really doing the right thing? That's healthy as well, because, you know, these times there are going to be some casualties. We know that, sadly, there are going to be casualties, which will make the Remainers stronger. And the Remainers will be those who want to remain and want to get stronger. And, you know, those people who do decide to go and do something else may well look back on this time years to come and say, you know what, that was the best thing I ever did. For the people who want to remain and make the most of this business and this opportunity we really have now, I'm right behind them as well. So absolutely, you know, it's a very pivotal moment.
So I want to thank you. Obviously, Simon's run off mid talk, but on behalf of Simon and everybody at Kerfuffle, thank you very much for the talk. Your details if people want to contact you, I'm sure you're registered on the Kerfuffle site as well. But your website is posted just behind you, isn't it? Rawlings.info.
Yeah, go to that. It'll take you through to a state agency insight, or just email me at richard@rawlings.info as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Not at all, Dave. Thanks very much.
Care,
Enjoyed it.
Take
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.